And the more that we recognize this, the more that we'll be able to put down the lie that God is nowhere to be seen in our struggles. And we'll pick up this truth that each and every day, moment to moment, God is going to give us exactly what we need. Hello everyone, welcome back or welcome to my channel. My name is Melody and I make faith-based content here on YouTube. I post new videos every single Monday. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely be sure and subscribe. I would love to have you join the family. So in today's video, we are going to continue talking about the wilderness season. These seasons where things are just hard, where the road seems long, it is challenging, and you might be struggling to hold on to your hope or your faith in God. I think it is so important that we talk about these more challenging seasons, how to navigate through them, and also encouragement for them. Because first and foremost, the enemy would love for all of us to believe that we are the only ones going through something, when that couldn't be further from the truth. Also, when we don't talk about how to navigate these challenging seasons, it makes it hard for us to hold on to God through them, which is imperative for us being able to grow in this endurance that Paul talks about in Romans chapter 5. And lastly, and what we're really going to be focusing on in today's video, as we recognize God's provision, this way that he shows up for us in this challenging season and gives us maybe not what we want, but what we need. This allows us to keep our eyes fixed on the Lord and not our circumstance. And that is honestly the only way we can make it through these challenging seasons. It's this ability to know and also recognize that what we need day to day, this concept of daily manna, is coming from God. And the more that we recognize this, the more that we'll be able to put down the lie that God is nowhere to be seen in our struggles. And we'll pick up this truth that each and every day, moment to moment, God is going to give us exactly what we need. Now, this might sound like some fluffy, feel-good stuff, but sis, this is Bible. We're going to be going to Exodus chapter 16, and we're going to see how God showed up day to day for the Israelites as they were making their journey out of Egypt into the promised land. This land that they were navigating through was the literal wilderness. So God knows how to lead people through these wilderness seasons and these wilderness times. Through their experience, we learn a lot about what not to do, but also we get to see a God who shows up for his people, who provides for their needs. What is required of his people, though, to receive this provision, and we get a better understanding of what it looks like to walk through these challenging times, knowing that our help comes from above. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and dive on in. Again, we're going to be focusing on Exodus chapter 16, so definitely grab your Bible, sis, and let's get into it. So in Exodus chapter 16, we're specifically going to be looking at verse 1 through 16, but I definitely encourage you to pause here and read the chapter in its entirety. You will not regret it. Now let's get into these verses. So basically, this passage opens up with stating that this is the 15th day in the second month of the Israelites' journey. This basically means they are 30 days into their journey, and at this point they are starting to grumble. They're starting to wonder, what is God doing because we are hungry? In verse 3, you can see this outrageous statement that they made. They are wondering if they were better off back in Egypt, where at least they had food, they had water, and they're wondering if God brought them out of Egypt into the wilderness for them to die. So at this, the Lord says to Moses, all right, I hear the cries of the people. I am going to send down bread from heaven. However, I'm going to give specific instructions and I'm going to test them. Are they going to follow my instructions to go out each and every morning, gather this manna, and on the 6th day, gather double so they do not have to go out and gather anything on the Sabbath, the 7th day? So after this, Moses and Aaron go over to the Israelites and they say, all right, the Lord has heard your guys' complaints. He is going to meet your need and send down quail this evening and bread from heaven in the morning. And you are going to know that it was the Lord your God who rescued you and got you out of Egypt. They also point out to the Israelites that you actually were not complaining to us, you were complaining to God. So come over here and share your complaints with the Lord. And it says in verse 10 that God's glory appeared as a cloud. So then we go on to rehash these instructions from the Lord to Moses and from Moses to the Israelites. You are to go out each and every day and collect this bread daily. You aren't to send someone else to get it for you. You are to collect what you need every single day. So we jump to verse 13, and it says that in the evening, quail covered the land, and in the morning there was dew on the ground, and when it evaporated, there was this bread down from heaven. But it says that the Israelites had no idea what it was, and they asked, "What is this?" And Moses said, "This is the bread that God has given you to eat." And verse 16 wraps up with Moses instructing the Israelites to gather as much as each person needs to eat. All right, sis, let's go ahead and unpack these verses. What does this mean for us? What does this mean for the Israelites when it comes to God's provision? What does this show us about God's character? Let's just get on into it. So the first thing that really stands out to me about these verses and about this particular chapter is the fact that God's provision came for the Israelites in a way that they didn't even know existed. So much so that when the manna actually was on the ground and they're looking at it, the Israelites asked Moses, like, "What is this?" And so this makes me wonder, how often are we missing God's provision because he's showing up in a way that he has never done before? Or maybe we're missing it because we're expecting it to come in a specific way or be packaged in a specific way, and God allows it to show up in something that we've never seen before. Now, the good news here is just like the Israelites were able to ask, "Hey, what is this?" and they got their question answered, we too have the ability to go to God, go to some trusted friends, go to our mentor, go to our pastor. "Hey, what is this? I see this popping up in my life. Is this the Lord's provision? Is this God showing up for me in my time of need? Because I feel like I'm missing it. I thought it was one thing, but maybe it's another." And so that's the first thing that we have to realize. First of all, God will provide, right? That's like the underlying foundation. God will provide what we need day to day. God did not provide what they needed for their journey for the next month. He showed up and gave them what they needed for that day. And so we have to expect his provision to come to us in that same capacity. I know for myself, as I've been walking through this wilderness season, okay, this challenging road, I've been asking God, how are you gonna bring it all together? How are things gonna change? How are you gonna work? And he's been showing me, Mel, focus on today. I'm gonna give you what you need to get through today. And when you look back, however long it takes, you'll see how I worked it out, but simply focus on my provision for today. And so I want to encourage whoever else is trying to figure out the big how. How is God going to work it together? How is this going to be changing? How is it even possible? God is going to do what he said he was going to do, and he is going to do it in a way that allows you to hold on to him and keep him at the center and to cling on to him. And in that, just expect that he will provide for you what you need moment to moment. And when we stop wondering the big question of how, and we start to see his hand in that day to day, his hand in the moment to moment, it increases our faith. I know for myself, that is absolutely what I've been experiencing. And so that is the beautiful part of all of this, is that God will meet our needs. And maybe it's gonna be in a way that we have never seen him do it before, and we might be a little like, "Hey, what is this?" But he is going to meet our needs. Now, the next thing that really stands out to me, and one that we really have to pause and do a little bit of a heart check on, is the fact that the Israelites started in their complaining. They started to twist the past. They started to think fondly of those days when they were in slavery, when they were in captivity in Egypt. In verse 3, it starts talking about, hey, at least when we were in Egypt, we had pots overflowing with meat and we could eat all the bread we wanted. And so as we're walking through our wilderness season, our challenging road, we want to make sure that we are protecting our mind and keeping it focused on the facts and not romanticizing these places and spaces that God has brought us out of. Sometimes we can have these legitimate needs, right? Like the Israelites had a legitimate need for food, but they wanted to get that legitimate need met in an illegitimate way by going back into slavery, going back into this place that God had literally moved heaven and earth to get them out of. And so we want to make sure that we are not trying or thinking fondly of these places and spaces where we were able to get our needs met, our legitimate needs met, granted in an illegitimate way. And we don't want to romanticize that or think that that is the solution to our problems now. I think when we truly have this perspective, we're able to rest more fully in the goodness of God and not to question his ways, not to question just the season and the times that we're going through, especially when it is challenging. And last but not least, something that we have to remember when it comes to obedience, and that these verses highlight perfectly, is the fact that God's provision comes with a requirement or responsibility of our obedience. God gave very explicit instructions to Moses and said, hey, I'm going to provide for you. I'm going to rain down this bread for you, but Monday through Saturday, you are not to go and collect this bread. You are only to collect it 6 days a week. And on the 6th day, I'll provide double so you don't go out on the Sabbath and collect anything. And as you read through the rest of Exodus chapter 16, you see what disobedience looks like. Disobedience looks like the people still trying to go out or trying to collect more than they need. And they're realizing that this manna, this bread, this sustenance that was good for them one day, if they disobeyed God, it turned into stinky, maggot-filled mess the next day. And so how often do we have to remind ourselves that we need to do what God said for us to do, be obedient to his instructions, nothing more, nothing less, and expect that provision to come day in and day out. The Israelites ended up wandering around the wilderness for 40 years in disobedience. Let us not wander in our wilderness season for that long, sis. Let us hold on to his hand. Let us keep our eyes fixed on him, and let us know that he is good, and don't question his goodness even when the things and our circumstances seem bleak, it seems dark, it seems challenging, and we don't know how he is going to work it together. This is where the faith comes in. We have to believe. We have to believe. We have to believe in the goodness of God. So I don't know who this is for, but I felt like it was very important for me to follow up last week's video with this encouragement that God has given me. Sis, just approach the Father day in and day out and believe that he will provide you what you need moment to moment. And don't expect for it to come in a specific package. Actually, probably expect for it to come in an unexpected package. I think the more that we're able to hold on to his hand, keep our eyes fixed on him, the more that we're able to navigate these seasons with grace. And like I talked about in the last video, the more that we go through these afflictions, the more comfort we're going to receive from God, and the more that we're going to be able to comfort others in their affliction. And so nothing is wasted with God, sis. Nothing is wasted with him. All right, sis, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. And now, of course, it is your turn. So in the comments below, I would love to know, what has God's provision in your life looked like? Whether it is in your current season or maybe in a previous season, let us know in the comments what it looked like for God to give you what you needed day to day, moment to moment. I feel like this will be such a source of encouragement for those of us walking through a wilderness season. So definitely let us know in the comments and take a second and scroll on through. As always, I love you guys, and I will see you in my next video. Peace.